Hello, everyone, and welcome back into the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast, brought to you, as always, by the GSMC Sports Network. Before we get into our second segment of today's show, I do want to remind you, as always, that if you wish to contribute and interact with the show a little bit more directly in other shows around the network, consider making yourselves available to the GSMC Podcast on that website, or the Super Chat, Super Thanks, and Super Stickers features here on YouTube as well, to get your opinions and input on air or leave a tip or donation. Either one is greatly appreciated by all concerned at the network, and it just makes our shows that much better. Without further ado, let's jump into our second segment, previewing our final divisional round game in the AFC. The main event, people are calling it, the Bills-Ravens game. I did not mean to put it there. I will immediately fix this graphic down here, but this is a game of epic proportions. This is a game a lot of people wanted to see. Maybe coming a little bit earlier than people would have wanted. This would have been a great AFC Championship game, but alas, the Chiefs are just the Chiefs, and they're almost inevitable. But this is as good as any divisional round game you could potentially get, because it's between the two primary MVP candidates, Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. And this is a rematch of a game that the Ravens completely dominated early on in the season. I believe in week 4, the tune of 35-10. Derrick Henry was running wild in that one. But ultimately, this game, higher stakes, and now the Bills have home field advantage, and I think this is going to come down to which supporting cast is ultimately better on the day. I do feel like these teams are so evenly matched, so dominant, that very little is going to separate them. This could come down to one silly mistake made by one of the teams. It could come down to a last-second field goal. It could come down to a defensive takeaway. But all I know is that it's not going to come easy. This is not going to be a Ravens blowout like it was in week 4. This is in Buffalo with a rowdy Bills Mafia behind their team, willing them to an AFC Championship game, a Super Bowl berth, potentially their first ever Super Bowl. This is not the safety of M&T Bank Stadium anymore if you're Baltimore. But I still think Baltimore are very much going to be in this game because their supporting cast is as dominant as any on the AFC side of the bracket. And it could be enough to see them win a Super Bowl. Let's talk about them first and foremost, because I think that a lot of people are thinking that because they're at home, it's the only way we can separate these two teams, and the Bills' home field advantage is fantastic. Why not have them winning? But on the Baltimore side of things, the reason why I think they can win this game and win much more this season is because of Derrick Henry. Because when we look at all the injuries the Ravens have sustained this season, I think Mark Andrews was injured a little bit early on this season. Now Zay Flowers was out for the first playoff game and for the last couple of weeks of the regular season, expected to be back in this one. I do think that the reason why this offense looks a lot more open than it ever was is because of the opportunities presented by Derrick Henry, not just in the running game, but in the receiving game as well. Because he is a physical brand of running back that a lot of NFL defenses are not used to defending over a full 4 quarters. And the irony in that is he might not even be needed for a full 4 quarters. 1 quarter of Derrick Henry's dominance could decide a game in Baltimore's favor. That's how good he can be in any given moment. Combine that with Lamar's dual threat ability and the ability for this offense to attack you downfield with guys like Flowers, Bateman, Andrews, and Likely, and this team is going to be difficult to stop. And if I'm Buffalo, I'm starting to think that my defensive game plan has to be a little bit different than what we're used to, because the Bills, yes, dominated the Broncos defensively. They let up that first touchdown in the first quarter and completely shut them down after. But I do think that the secondary is going to struggle a lot to contain these receivers, and this pass rush is going to have its hands full up front in terms of trying to bring down both Lamar and Derrick Henry. But I do think that if there's a defense better than anyone at disguising coverages and being disciplined in zone, it is Buffalo. They're just going to have to go about it in a way where explosives simply cannot happen. And I think that's an incredible statement to say considering you're going up against Baltimore. Because they live and die by the explosive play, whether it's on the ground or through the air. And Buffalo has been very prone to explosive plays. See their games against Detroit, Baltimore, and other fantastic high-powered offenses. But when I look at Buffalo and I look at their offense, what they're able to do, I think that when you put both of these teams together and compare them, it really becomes starkly clear that it's just a too difficult game to call. Even though the Bills supporting cast on paper looks wholly weaker than the Baltimore Ravens cast. I mean, Josh Allen, yes, is having an MVP caliber season and might just win his first award, even though Lamar has something to say about it. But when you look around, James Cook is an incredible running back, an underrated running back. Should have been a Pro Bowler, in my opinion, this year. Really helped my personal fantasy football team as well. When you look around, you have guys like Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, Amari Cooper, who has struggled mightily ever since coming over in the trade from the Browns. And then Dalton Kincaid, obviously a very special tight end, but ultimately not necessarily the sum of its parts compared to Baltimore's offense. You kind of start doubting them, right? We're saying, well, surely their time is up, because eventually a defense, much like the improved Baltimore Ravens defense, who really thrive in the secondary, in covering people, blanketing people, will really stymie this group. But that's the problem that a lot of defenses have with Buffalo. Since they don't have a true number one receiver, and Josh Allen is so incredibly good at creating out of structure, you can't really defend one superstar receiver, focus in on one superstar receiver. And so, even though Baltimore is so disciplined on the outside with Marlon Humphrey and Nate Wiggins, and then you have roaming free safety Kyle Hamilton in the middle of the field, these Bills receivers don't care, because they're not looking to make the spectacular plays. They're looking to help Josh Allen. And sometimes Josh Allen is so good he doesn't necessarily need their help. He knows what he wants to do, even out of structure, which is scary to think about. So, even when you think you have slowed down this offense by slowing down the receivers, Josh Allen will make an incredible play, whether because of its own volition or because his receivers are so connected with his play out of structure, that it will begin to frustrate you mightily. And so that's why I think when I look at this game, that could be a separating factor as well. Josh Allen's play out of structure and the ensuing understanding his receivers in terms of helping him in that regard. So when you take it at face value and look at both of these offenses side by side, how the running game of Derrick Henry combined with Lamar's dual threat ability and the downfield passing attack for Baltimore on the offensive side of things. And you look at the Bills, this group that's seemingly not as talented as Baltimore because of Josh Allen's sheer talent, really has grown around him and helped him grow as a quarterback. Both of these teams are really too dangerous to say, well, one of them can really dominate and that will be the end of that. I think just because Buffalo is at home, yes, you can be welcome to pick them anytime. But ultimately, I feel like it would be a true detriment to disregard one team just because you don't necessarily take them at face value. So, I'm presenting them to you like this, and ultimately, by the end of this segment, I will have made a prediction. But I just want to say, no matter what happens, both of these teams don't deserve to go out in this round. They are two spectacular teams amongst the AFC's elite that are going to stay there for a long time, and neither of them deserves to lose in a heartbreaking manner or in a blowout fashion, mind you. But no matter what happens, let's hope for an excellent game between these two teams. Let's hope that potentially Josh Allen wins his first MVP, and we're happy about it, or Lamar wins his third MVP, and we're happy about it, and he gets his first Super Bowl to prove that he's amongst the most elite quarterbacks in NFL history. But always remember, never pick a game because you didn't do the research. And both of these teams, yes, are very difficult to do research on because they're good at a lot of things and can really, on any given day, win a game through sheer force and talent. But that's not what the scan is going to come down to. It's just going to come down to who on the day is going to make more plays, which supporting cast will help their quarterback in a better manner. In terms of predictions, if you had to force me to pick someone, I'm just like many other people picking Buffalo because Rowdy Bill's Mafia is much different than M&T Bank Stadium. And I feel like that home field advantage is going to get a lot tougher for Baltimore if the Bills get off to a fast start, which I think they will. Because when I think about last week, yeah, they kind of started off a bit slowly. But I do think that they've learned from their mistakes and they're going to want to get off on the right foot here. And so Baltimore should be warned. The stadium's going to be loud. Buffalo are going to be primed and ready to go, and Baltimore's going to have to match that energy. So ultimately, because the energy is strictly on the side of the Bills, I have to pick them, but I think it's going to be very close, and I respect the Ravens mightily. I think this game's going to come down to a last-second field goal made by Tyler Bass with a score of 30-28. Let me know what you think about that in the comments because it's such a difficult game to discuss and analyze, even predict, just because of how well-rounded both of these squads are. And I truly wish both of them the best of luck, even if they lose this match, because I do want both of these quarterbacks to win a Super Bowl and be regarded as one of the best of their generations. But without further ado, this ends the segment, and coming up next, we transition into the world of college football. That championship game is coming up. We'll be talking about the top 5 players who can make the most difference in that specific game right after this short break.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it?